Rev up your engines! Okay, today I have a 2014 RAV4, second owner, and I'm going to talk about a tune-up and maintenance. And just realize, there's really no such thing as a tune-up these days. You got to go way back in time when cars actually needed tune-ups. Even this 94 Celica didn't need a tune-up. It's got electronic ignition, fuel injection, there's no carburetor to adjust and tune. But that doesn't mean you just leave your car alone. Take this 2014 RAV4. 116,000 miles, and it's presently running fine, but the owner understands. You got to maintain a car. Now, she does her own oil changes. That's the main thing on a Toyota. But there are other things. It came with no maintenance records, so she doesn't know the history. And it's running fine, but let's say yours isn't running fine and you think a, in quotes, tune-up will fix it. The first thing you do with any cars, hook up a scan tool. Because you could do a tune-up, spark plugs, air filter, fuel filter, all kinds of stuff. If the sensor's bad, it's still going to run bad. So always start with a scan. Doesn't matter what kind of tool you're using, they all give you pretty good codes. And it's so easy to do. Just turn the key on so the idiot lights are on and the car isn't running. Then go to the data port and plug it in. The code reader starts working right then. Everything's green here. There's no powertrain codes or anything. Since this is a decent scan tool, I'm going to do a bit more than that. I'm going to do system status. And as you can see, I can do an all module scan, which really gives you an idea. It behooves a mechanic working on your car to do this. You can see this takes less than 2 minutes. And in that 2 minutes, I can learn an awful lot. I knew a mechanic in Chicago. This was over 40 years ago. And even 40 years ago in Chicago, when you took your car into an accredited repair shop in the city of Chicago, they had to do this. You had to pay for it, but they had to do it and tell the customer everything that was wrong with the car. They made a law for that. But you can see, it's pretty fast. No codes on any of these things. Everything's zero so far. Aha! And we found a few things. We care about some of them. The engine, there's 3 we care. The main body, we'll look at that too. Navigation system, who cares? Everybody has phones these days. And the tire pressure monitoring system doesn't work anymore. And that's mainly because it's 9 years old. The batteries are dead on most of the sensors. She didn't care about that. What we're going to care about is 2 things. The main body, we'll see what that code is. Tire pressure warning communication. So, that's the same as the stupid TPMS system that we know isn't working. We don't care about that. Keep scrolling up. What do we have? Engine and ECT. Now that might mean something. It's got EVAP emissions control, incorrect purge flow. These often do that. That's code 1. Code 2 is there's a gross leak on the system. Okay? And code 3 is a startability malfunction. Toyotas often trip the startability just because the battery is a little bit weak or it was really cold outside. That I'm not worried about. I'll test the battery, tell us she needs a new one. But the other ones are emissions codes, EVAP codes for the EVAP system. Sometimes it's obvious. We'll look at the obvious things first. Now, the EVAP system, it's part of getting rid of gasoline vapors and not venting them in the atmosphere. Sometimes it's as simple as a bad gas cap. As we look at this one, it's the original gas cap. It's still got the little hanger on it. I'd say the whole thing is a bad gas cap. Now, a bad gas cap won't keep your car from starting running, okay? The only thing is you can't meet the emission standards when it's time to get your car inspected, so you could change the gas cap. This is Clarksville, Tennessee. They don't emission test cars, so nobody cares about that. But it is a Toyota, and notoriously, when people change the air filter, they often knock some of these hoses off. So we're going to look at all the hoses and look closely with a strong flashlight to make sure none of the hoses have come off. These hoses back here will often come off, but nah, they're all plugged in. I don't see anything missing. You shake them, they're not loose or anything. These are all on. So, that's probably just the gas cap. We'll get another gas cap anyways later on, but she wants me to maintain it. She did get spark plugs. Spark plugs wear out over time. They may be the original ones, so she bought a set, let's put them in. Now take the stupid beauty cover off. Take the coils off. Oh, we got a 10mm socket. And of course, we don't want to lose the stupid parts, so my advice, put them on a safe place. Like the cowling here, and they can't go anywhere. We'll wiggle it and pull it out. And we got a 5/8 magnetic socket so it doesn't fall when you take it out. Now pull out the first spark plug. They're hard beginning, but then they twirl once you get them going. They have relatively long threads. Out we go. See, with the magnet it sticks in good. won't fall out. So let's examine the spark plug. As you can see, it's worn. It seems to me to be the original one. And it's got a little speckling on it, which is normal when they get this old. It's not black from running too rich. You always get a little bit of buildup for impurities in the fuel, but it's time to change it for sure. Now these are iridium spark plugs, so we're replacing them with iridium spark plugs. They last the longest. Why mess around? You pay a few bucks more. If it lasts 116,000 miles and still running good, who cares about spending a few extra bucks? And when you're gonna put them in, notice, this is all already plated. Do not put any type of anti-seize stuff. This keeps them from seizing. It's already plated. You put anti-seize stuff, they won't be in there right, and they can actually screw themselves out from slipping. Leave these alone, just put them in naked. Easy enough to do. See, it doesn't fall. You don't want it falling. If it falls, it can crunch the top and make it too short. You don't want it falling in. That's why you get the magnetic ones like I do. First, you put them in finger tight. Then put your ratchet on. Turn it till it's snug. Okay, it's snug. Now turn it maybe 15, 20 degrees more. That's plenty tight enough. Now, if you're a fanatic or an amateur, you can get a torque wrench, do the correct torque wrench settings. I've been doing this a long time. With something like that, I know it by feel. If you don't, get a torque wrench. Set the torque wrench at 18 pound-feet of torque and torque them down if you want to do that. And of course, we got to do all four. You got to have them even. Take out the 10mm bolt, wiggle it a little. Now this one won't come out because the wiring loom is too short. So you got to squeeze this and pull it off, which is almost impossible with fingers. Get a little pair of pliers. The pliers will squeeze it. Then it pops off. Makes it easier. And then you can compare spark plugs to see if the engine is worn unevenly, but in this case it looks pretty much just like the other spark plugs. Some are black and some are white, means that the black one's running rich, or if they're all black, means the whole system's running rich. I don't expect anything of this because there are no codes, but you want to look at them anyways. Now, as we can see, number 3 is worn pretty much the same color as the other. They're all even so far. Then we'll take out the last one. Guess I'm getting old. I can't do that one with my bare fingers. As we look at the last one, it's about the same too. They're all worn evenly. They're worn out, they're old, they've been in there 116,000 miles, so it's time to change them. And also realize that these iridium spark plugs come pre-gapped. Do not re-gap them. If they've been bent or something, take them back and get another one. They're not made to be re-gapped. You can easily damage that thin little iridium wire that's in there. Then of course put all the coil-on plugs back in their hole, plug them until they click. You hear it click, and bolt each one down. First, just do it finger tight. Then, it's tight now. A little bit more, that's it. Then start looking at everything. You wouldn't believe how many times I got in cars that didn't run bad. The only thing wrong was the air filter was dirty. Here's the air filter. Here's a good test. There's the blazing sun. Let's stick this in. You can't see the blazing sun through it, so it's time for a new air filter. So I'll get a new air filter. As long as that, we'll get another gas cap too. So I'll put the new air filter in. As you can see, when you look into the sun with this one, look. You can actually see through it. It's not blocking the sun because it's a clean filter. So we'll put the filter in. Fits right in. You got to make sure that they line up good. And that snaps in place. Nice and tight. I said previously, make sure you didn't knock any of these vacuum lines off. And speaking of leaks, we'll pop the gas, put it in a new gas cap. They just screw on. You turn until they click. Now I've erased all the codes, so we'll take it for a little ride, see if any of them come back. It's a typical RAV4. It shifts fine. You step on it. It's got enough power. Then it shifts back nice and quiet. You're pretty high up in the air, but even with that, it handles decently. I mean, not the greatest handling vehicle. It's a little SUV after all. It still rides good with the original shocks and struts on it. Not being a super heavy vehicle, these things wear things out a lot slower than a big giant SUV. Plus they get a lot better gas mileage than a big giant SUV. Now she drives it around in eco mode all the time, so I'll just leave it on eco. Now it's a little rattly when you hit bumps. These RAV4s aren't the quietest vehicles, especially these ones that are a few years old. They do tend to rattle. The plastic stuff, but I mean, it runs perfectly fine. As we come to a stop, doesn't shake. A little bitty 4-cylinder engine with mileage on it, but idle's fine. And now just for kicks, we'll rehook up the scan tool. With the key on, engine not running, there's no powertrain codes or anything, but it was like that before. So we did before. We'll go to the full system scan, all modules scan, and we'll scan it, and we're off to the races. Now, I certainly don't expect everything to have gone away because we didn't work on the tire pressure monitoring system. That's got problems. Could cost $1,000 or more to change all the sensors, and the control unit looks like it's got problems. Real expensive. Air pressure gauge, that's cheap. But let's see what happened with the EVAP code that would cause it to fail emissions if you do emissions testing in your area. Right, here we go. The all module scan's done. So 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. There's one here, the main body. And what does that say? Tire pressure warning system. We know that's a problem, so we don't care. So we'll keep going. Navigation system. We knew the navigation system didn't work before. We didn't work on it. Who cares? These navigation systems on cars are crap. Your phone does a much better job. It updates itself. You're already paying for your phone. So why pay extra for a crappy Toyota system that you got to update and it doesn't work that well? So we don't care about that either. We'll continue on. The only other code is tire pressure monitoring, and we know it's got problems. So we actually fixed the EVAP system leak, large leak. You say large leaks out of the gas cap, replace the gas cap, that fixed that. So if you lived in an area where they inspect cars, you would pass the emissions test. Here in Clarksville, nobody cares, but if you're someplace else, that gas cap would have fixed that problem. Here's an interesting vehicle. It's a 2010 Buick Enclave. It's got winding power steering. As you can see, it's got 125,924 miles on it. Now you can hear a little groaning in the power steering. I'll turn the fan down. You can hear it. Not bad, but when it's cold, it's a lot louder. And the owner's kind of deciding, is this thing going to start nickel and diming me to death? It actually runs good, it shifts good, it doesn't have any particular problems with it other than whiny power steering. So we'll go through the whole thing and see, was it a good vehicle? Just still got some miles left in it, or is it time to say goodbye? If you look under the hood, it's got a 3600 3.6 liter V6 engine. And they're actually excellent engines. These have sand cast aluminum blocks, but they got cast iron liners in them. This thing doesn't burn any oil. It still runs perfectly fine with the mileage that it has. The engines have always been the strong points. These V6 engines, when they're made right, so the liners take the wear and they won't burn oil because pistons work better in iron than they do in aluminum. Aluminum scores too easily. He bought the cars years ago from mother-in-law, so they knew the history of the car, hadn't been wrecked or anything. We'll start out by doing a straight analysis because really, if it's in rough shape otherwise, if the data shows everything's worn out, there's no sense in messing with the power steering. It works fine, it just makes a noise. Here, just sell the car and get rid of it and get another car. Well, plugging in, there's a data point. We'll start analyzing. We'll do an auto scan. Enclave, front wheel drive, 2010, 3.6 liter. Do an auto diagnosis. Found a few failures. Whether they mean much or not, we're going to find out. Realize you got a 12-year-old Buick. Yeah, electronic stuff, a lot of crap, might not work. But if you don't care, you can continue driving the car. Like I said, the only complaint he's got is power steering's whining. We don't care about the passenger door switch, the driver door switch failure, the radio. He says it works okay. Airbags aren't going to work on a really old car. Let's just check it out and see what the heck's happening. The supplemental restraint, we'll see what that is. The trouble code, read trouble code. Low voltage below threshold. Passenger present module malfunction, that means it's not weighing the people right. Lost communication with passenger present control system module. Me, I would never trust the airbags in a 12-year-old GM. Just make sure to buckle up. The other failures of the ECM, we'll see what's happening in the engine system. We'll read the trouble codes. And what we have is engine misfire detected. Cylinder number 2 and cylinder number 6. Now he's not complaining because it's running okay. Maybe in the past it had a misfire and it was fixed and nobody reset it right, but it's running perfectly fine now. So what we're going to do here, clear all these codes. Now they're gone. Now I've cleared the codes, and when we road test it, we'll learn a little bit more, see how it's going, see if the codes come back. Could be somebody just didn't erase them because it's running perfectly fine. Now if they come back and it's running perfectly fine, who really cares? Because engine light wasn't coming on, there weren't any real problems showing. A lot of times you'll get a glitch. A GM with 129,000 miles, 12 years old, the computer feels every few thousandths of a second, once in a while it misfires, it's going to trip the stupid code. We've erased that. Now let's look at the live data, see what shape this car's actually in. You can't hide from the live data. Here we go. So far it's all blue, which is good. Short-term fuel trim, bank 1, bank 2. It's practically zero. It's almost running perfectly, just a tiny bit off. So that was misfiring, so let's look at the misfire data. It's not misfiring now, that's the live data, so let's go to the historical data. The history is number 2 misfired 14 times, number 4 39 times, and number 6 is 73 times. 1,640 cycles. So it's a very small amount of misfiring. Who cares? It's running perfectly fine. Seeing how old this thing is, it's still got the original spark plugs. Yeah, probably a good idea to change it at some point in time, but it runs good enough now. Who really cares? See, on a GM, these scan tools are fantastic. This has tests to see if an injector for cylinder number 1 has a short. That passed. It doesn't have an open circuit. That passed. So if you even have a wiring problem in these, this is going to show you. Now, it's good that GM added the data to the system. GMs, over time, have a history of the wiring harness for the injectors having problems. I've seen old vehicles. Man, I'm scratching my head. Gee, I wonder what's wrong. I wonder what's wrong. But this is 2010, and it's new enough. Since it gives you this data, you don't have to check the wiring. This is checking them all the time. If it said there was a problem, then you know that system had a problem. You could check the wiring, you could check the injectors, but see, these are okay. So you don't have to do anything. Shows you the fuel rail pressure. You can see what the pressure is. You know, you didn't put a gauge on it. Considering how well it runs, the main thing we're dealing with now, we're gonna road test it, is the whiny power steering pump. So, now the steering works okay, but it whines. It doesn't like to whine. If you bought a brand new factory pump, it's a pain in the butt. It's 3.5 hours labor. So you're going to spend about $1,000 replacing. So here's a trick I learned years ago. We're going to the auto parts store, buy some full synthetic power steering fluid. Now, as you can see, step on the gas, got plenty of power, shifts smooth, still runs great. I bought synthetic power fluid. I'm going to suck out the power steering fluid from the pump and put in full synthetic. And here's the reason. Synthetic fluids flow better at hot temperatures, but also flow better at low temperatures. This makes the noise when it's low. This will flow better. A lot of times, you'll get rid of the noise entirely. Now, you might think, where the heck's the power steering reservoir? Well, it's because the stupid beauty cover's in the way. We get this crapper out of the way. There's the reservoir right there. Get my vacuum pump. You can use all kinds of pumps, turkey basters, whatever. I happen to have a vacuum pump. And we just take the suction end, take the cap off the reservoir, and stick it in. And we'll pump the fluid out. Here it comes. You won't get all the fluid, but you get quite a bit out. Then you pour some in, then drive it around for 10 minutes, and then suck it out. Do that 3 or 4 times, and it'll change most of the fluid out, or at least diluted it a bunch. So now we'll pour the synthetic fluid in. It's about this far from the top, and of course it's got a little cap on it. Everything's sealed for your protection these days. I think it's more sealed for your annoyance, if you ask me. I find it annoying. There, now we can actually pour the stuff. Pour until it's about, half an inch from the top. Then we'll put the top back on and road test it. We'll leave the beauty cover off for now. And as I said, we'll drive it around for 5-10 minutes and then repeat the process 2 or 3 times. Heck, I got it road tested anyways to see if any of the trouble codes come back, so we'll kill 2 birds with 1 stone here. Now, even after 10 minutes of driving, and we've only done it once, we're going to do it 3 or 4 times, you can see you don't hear it like you did before. A lot quieter already. Because if there's one thing that synthetic fluid is good for, it's high pressure applications that have to flow. Power steering can be 1,500 pounds per square inch pressure. A lot of pressure. It's got to flow right. And the synthetic fluid, it flows better at both hot and low temperatures. Here we go again. Suck the fluid out. You notice some came out because it expands when it gets hot. I put a little bit too much in, but I mean, we're pumping it out, so it's not hurting anything. And we'll fill it back up again. Best to have a flashlight so you can see the dark hole. And this time we'll be more accurate. We'll measure it with a dipstick. So now it's full. Now let's pour this dirty fluid in a old moonshine jar and see what it looks like. As you can see, it's pretty dark. Red tint to it, but it's pretty dark. It's supposed to be real light red. It's dirty. There's no arguing it. That's why it's a good idea to change your power steering fluid. If you got a power steering pump, a lot of the new ones are electronic. You don't have to worry about it. If you change it out every 5 or 6 years, it's no big deal, but change it out. You won't get whiny, and of course the dirt, it'll eat the seals up. But if it starts leaking, these systems are extremely expensive. The power steering pump, the rack. So change it every once in a while, and the synthetic fluid works best. So now after road testing and doing that 4 or 5 times, we'll look at the data, because we did reset all that stuff. And as you can see here, the There's no codes. Everything's green. It even reset the drive cycle monitor. So as it stands now, this car would even pass an emissions inspection. They don't do it here in Clarksville, so nobody here cares. But the misfires occur so randomly, it didn't trip any check engine codes. The engine light operates as shown. When you turn the key on, the light comes on, showing the bulb still there. Then we start it up. It goes off. You can see all the lights are off now. So the problems that it has are very minor problems. Who would even care? I'd tell them, hey, drive it for a while. What the heck? Prices of new cars are so expensive. This thing still runs. So what have you learned today? Well, even though cars don't need tune-ups anymore, there's things that you can easily do yourself every once in a while to maintain your car correctly. There are things you can do yourself, and if you have a scanner, if you don't, go get at least a cheap scanner, because then you can see if there's any problems before you work on the car. So then you'll know that if you fix them, and after you road test them, the machine will say, did you fix that problem, or did you not fix the problem? It's pretty cut and dry. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.